The evening hush of a Jamaican hillside drifts soft and slow across the trees. A murmur of leaves, a breath of breeze, and the occasional call of a distant bird all melt together into the warm sigh of twilight. There is a softness here, a rhythm not of speed, but of stillness. In the village of Sherwood Content, time does not rush. It stretches, breathes. Imagine a narrow, sun-worn road. It curls lazily between painted houses, banana trees swaying at its shoulders, and the rich earth beneath holding centuries of footsteps. Dust clings to bare feet. The scent of evening cooking, jerk chicken, Scotch bonnet, boiling yam, mingles with the bark of dogs and laughter of children chasing balls carved from cloth. A small boy giggles as he darts away from a teasing cousin, legs long, arms flailing, a streak of life disappearing into the golden light. That boy's name is Usain, but here nobody says his name with reverence. Not yet. He is just one of many. One more barefoot soul bounding across the marl and earth. His speed is playful, his name ordinary. There is nothing to suggest, not yet, that this boy will someday melt stopwatches, steal breath from hundreds of thousands in packed stadiums, and leave the world gasping at the curl of a fingertip to his lips, in a celebration known in every corner of the earth. Not yet, because, before the glory came, a quiet deeper than silence, fed by the still rhythms of a countryside that demands nothing and yet gives everything. Here, before the screens and medals and record books, there is only the rustle of sugarcane, the song of a cricket echoing off the hills, and the sound of Usain's feet sprinting, not for gold, but from joy. He finds joy in the race, not the win, in ducking under washing lines and leaping puddles. He is not timing himself. He is not measuring strides. He is just running because it feels like flying. Sherwood Content is nestled in Trelawney Parish, a quiet spread of land northwestern, on the map of Jamaica. You might miss it. Were you looking from above? It does not shout, it whispers. The village population has barely stepped over 1,000. Coconut palms cast long shadows. The land dips in shallow bowls of green and climbs again in gentle waves. And it was upon this slope, without track or timer, that the roots of something unspeakable began. Usain was born in the summer of 1986, during a season that shimmered with heat. His mother, Jennifer, warm-voiced and steady. His father, Wellesley, known to neighbors as a simple, tireless man. They ran a grocery shop and worked the land. They fed their children with care, clothed them with modesty, and raised them with the rhythm of community, in church, in school, and in the clay-held hands of the village itself. But even there, in the hush of daily life, there were glimmers. Jennifer would watch her son move. Some children walked, some skipped. Usain always seemed to dart. She'd call his name and he'd be gone, past the gate, around the bend. A flash of impossibility before the echo of his laugh answered from far down the lane. That speed, though unshaped, untrained, uncelebrated, had already begun, whispering, but no one knew where it would lead, because nobody ever truly knows. When lightning will strike, the sound of rain against rusted zinc slips into the nighttime of the village. An occasional gust of wind stirs mango leaves. Beneath a deeply pitched roof, Usain sleeps, limbs sprawled across the mattress, 1 foot bare and hanging from the edge, his body still growing, angles stretching, as if the night skies above prepare. The boy for earth-shaking movement. Questions, if they arrived, came only in dreams. What wakes someone to destiny? Is it training? Is it talent? Or is it time itself, unfolding like dawn over blue ridges? The days pass slowly here, but one day they will ripple across history. For now, there is only the dusk and a mother's quiet humming in another room. Greatness, before it roars, must breathe. And the boy, not runner, not champion, not sniper-eyed, sprinter of Olympic lore, just the boy, curls softly in sleep. His toes twitch once, perhaps dreaming of running, or perhaps of nothing at all. What makes someone a legend? Is it power? Is it luck? Or is it the harmony between two truths? That every record holder was once a child, and every child, unseen, carries a secret spark. Tomorrow, he'll run again, down the lane, giggling into the trees. But tonight, he sleeps, deep and still, and somewhere, beyond the stars, the storm prepares. The morning arrives with the hush of mist over the hills. Dew clings to the tall blades of grass outside the modest home where Usain wakes, blinking sleep from his eyes. The sounds of roosters, of breeze brushing across palm leaves, are the first to greet him. Another day, same as the last. Or so it seems. Out here, children grow like bamboo, fast, tall, reaching without effort. Usain is different, though. His frame stretches quicker than most, lanky and awkward, his limbs always just slightly out of sync with the rest of him. A foal learning to walk, but never bothering to slow down. Even when he stumbles, he runs. Sherwood content doesn't push children toward glory. It presses them toward responsibility, humility, and the steady rhythm of everyday life. Chores before dreams, school before sport, and yet every so often a moment breaks through the routine, like when Jennifer Bolt calls for Usain, only to find him not around the corner, but halfway down the next road, barefoot and breathless from chasing a ball of old rags tied together with string. They tease him for it, the children, the shopkeepers, even the elders resting beneath the mango tree. That tall boy, always on the move, they chuckle. Him must have wings on him feet. He grins, not with pride, but with the ease of a boy who doesn't yet know the weight his feet will carry. He favors the ball before the baton. Cricket is his passion, playing wicket with bits of wood, imagining himself a star batsman on the lush fields of Sabina Park. Then soccer, darting between defenders with the looseness of a breeze through leaves. His friends cannot keep up. Neither can his shoes, which are constantly losing their soles, collapsing under the pressure of his every stride. But none of it matters. He has found something. Or rather, something inside him has found a way out. His height separates him. Even at 10 years old, he is taller than boys 2 years older. Teachers take notice. Coaches begin to squint at the boy, not with doubt, but with curiosity. It first begins as a question: can he be taught to run? But the question soon becomes, what happens if he is? His first organized race was at Waldensia Primary, in the heat that made your breaths feel heavy. The field was uneven, lined in chalk. Spectators were not international networks, but parents waving hats, and neighbors leaning from fences. There was no press, but there was something else, a murmur, an instinctual awe, like watching a hawk dive from the sky. Usain didn't start well. He rarely did. His start was too relaxed, too delayed, but then he moved. And once he moved, the ground vanished beneath him like it was no longer solid. Children and adults alike watched in surprise as he sailed past the others, head turning as if to laugh at the very idea that they'd almost caught him in the first place. There is a moment after a race, after the finish line and applause, where quiet comes again. And in that hush, it wasn't Usain who spoke. It was something else, something insistent, a whisper that had always been there, now just a little louder. He was invited to Cornwall College, a prestigious secondary school in the parish. But it was at William Knibb Memorial High School that his path would firm, guided by the steady hands of a man named Pablo McNeil, a former Olympic sprinter himself, with the eye of someone who'd seen what speed looked like when it had direction. Pablo wasn't easily impressed, but the first time he saw the boy sprint, his expression didn't shift. It stilled, quiet, reverent, not out of disbelief, out of recognition. The child did not run like others. He moved like someone untouched by gravity, strained not by effort, but by restraint. Raw talent, unshaped, unfinished, but undeniable. At first, Usain resisted discipline, loved the game more than the grind. McNeil saw the mischief and the smile, saw a boy who didn't understand what it meant to commit. But he also saw the future, bending toward the boy like grass bends to wind. Usain could win easily, and he often did, but it wasn't yet important to him. Others wanted medals. He just wanted to run fast enough to feel the world fall away behind him. But that world was closing in. He began winning at parish meets, school championships, regional tournaments. At 15, whispers became claims. This boy could be something. He could go far, maybe even the Olympics. Still, there was innocence. On the weekends, he helped in the family grocery shop, joking with customers as he restocked shelves. At school, he laughed too loudly, not yet aware that fame would one day make such easy laughter precious. He wasn't sculpting a legacy yet. He was just living and smiling, always smiling. But speed, when it arrives in someone like Usain, doesn't come alone. It brings attention, expectation, the twin shadows of praise. As his times improved, coaches whispered louder. Jamaica, a nation that always held sprinting close to its heart, began to lean in. Their radar locked to the boy from Trelawney. He broke the 200-meter national high school record, then shattered another. Each victory was both a step forward and a slip of the simple life he had always known. Few noticed in those moments the quiet price that greatness demands. He knew it least of all, but the wind knew it moved differently when he ran. Leaves chased in his wake. Dust lifted as though carried by something divine. And the same people who'd once clapped casually at his childhood races now watched with wide eyes. The murmurs had grown into voices. Lightning, someone called him once, not because of what he'd done, but because of what they saw waiting just ahead. They saw what he still could not, that his shadow had begun to stretch across time. One day, it would race far further than even his own legs would take him. He didn't understand legacy, not yet, but something in him listened when the road went quiet, and the world paused just long enough for his feet to strike the earth. There, on the same path he'd run since childhood, something timeless stirred. His muscles were still learning. His mind still wandered. But his feet had found a rhythm that belonged to legend. And while Sherwood content continued its gentle, cyclical ways, smoke curling from pots, children playing in rain puddles, dogs lazing in patches of sun, a seed had taken root. Soon, the boy would outpace the bounds of his village. He would step from the chalk-marked fields of school meets into arenas far wider than he could yet imagine. And as always, he would not chase records. At least, not at first. He would chase joy, laughter, a ball made of rags, rolling just ahead, and he would keep running until the world could not look away. The years passed as slowly as the breeze that wound its way through the trees of Sherwood Content. But for Usain, time had begun to move differently. Like footsteps pounding against the earth, the seasons started to gather speed. His legs, once stumbling, now moved with alarming certainty. Teenage limbs, taller than most, seemed built to outrace thunder. By the time he turned 15, Usain was no longer just Sherwood Content's secret. He had already become something of a treasure. In Trelawney Parish, and the whisper of his speed was now catching the wind beyond the hills. His stride, carved by play and polished by persistence, had earned him a place in the national conversation. In 2002, Montego Bay lit up with more than just sunlight. The IAAF World Junior Championships had come to Jamaica, the first ever hosted. In the Caribbean and in the stands, the clamor of cowbells and flags swirling like summer clouds greeted the young athletes with pride. But there, among hundreds, Usain stood apart, both in presence and potential. He entered the 200-meter event with a quiet promise, carrying around him the awe of expectation. Not from himself, at least not visibly, but from the island. At 15, he towered above his competitors, arms and legs seeming to belong to a man far older. But his face held on to boyhood, still round with youth, still shining with something untouched by pressure. He won gold that year, not just winning, commanding. Like oceans carving cliffs, he moved with a force both deliberate and unknowable. When he crossed the finish line, the clock read 20.61 seconds. That victory made him the youngest world junior champion ever in the 200 meters, a record he didn't even know existed. The crowd roared, flags waved. Jamaican journalists scribbled down his name with renewed urgency. Coaches nodded to each other, making quiet pacts. This boy must be protected, guided, shaped, because something rare had taken root. A young man whose feet had begun to slip into the footprints of national legends. But glory never walks alone. With recognition came demands. Interviews, invitations, flashes from cameras he didn't yet like. Papers began printing his pictures beside Olympic headlines, a foreshadowing that made his parents nervous and made others dream. Suddenly, this boy who once played barefoot past banana trees was being shaped for something far beyond island borders. Then came the offers, scholarships from overseas, training programs, opportunities designed to pull him from Jamaica's soil. But his family, steady in their love and loyalty, chose patience, chose home. Usain would continue training with Pablo McNeil and Fitz Coleman, men who knew that speed without grounding could scatter like dust in a storm. Still, things weren't simple, not in his heart. His playfulness hadn't faded. In fact, it now clashed with his rapid elevation into elite athletics. Coaches wanted seriousness, Bolt still wanted joy. He trained, but not always with grit. He listened, but often with one ear tuned to a joke or a breeze or the call of a soccer game. And with newfound fame came something he'd never carried before: pressure. In 2003, at the World Youth Championships in Sherbrooke, Canada, he lined up again for the 200 meters. Expectations surrounded him like thick air. Still, he sprinted to a new personal best, 20.40 seconds, a championship record. Another gold, applause, headlines, another medal to hang. But soon, clouds gathered. By 2004, his eyes were set on Athens, the Olympic Games. Just 18 years old and already carrying the weight of a nation's dreams. He had run 19.93 seconds earlier that year, becoming the first junior to break the 20-second barrier in the 200 meters. It lit up Jamaica, lit up the world, and then injury, a hamstring strain, before Athens weakened him. Yet still, there he was, in the Olympic Stadium, tall, hopeful, smiling, not yet knowing that sometimes the race ends before it begins. In his first round heat, already in pain, he failed to advance. Hobbled and disappointed, he quietly exited the stage as the world turned its eyes elsewhere. The newspapers were gentle. Mostly, Jamaica had seen brilliance already. They would wait a while longer for revelation. But for Usain, that failure was a strange silence. Not defeat, he would never call it that, but a pause. A reminder that time, even for the fastest men on earth, does not always arrive when we want it to. He returned home humbled, wiser, alert to the fine line between promise and burden. He began working more seriously with Glenn Mills, a man of patience, presence, and permanence. Mills saw in Bolt something beyond fast feet. He saw a storm gathering, but it had to be harnessed. Under Mills, Usain learned what it meant to study the curve of a race, to breathe through the pain of sacrifice, to measure ambition not just against the clock, but against self. Because even as the world watched him, with rising awe, Bolt wasn't yet whole. In the years that followed, injuries lingered like smoke. He would flash brilliance, a stunning race here, a record there, but something in his body would resist, pull, ache. He competed at the Carifta Games, the Pan American Juniors. His name echoed across podiums, yet the string of minor injuries made his future uncertain. He even briefly considered quitting, not forever, but long enough to reclaim joy. His heart hadn't yet caught up to the demands of his talent. Some days, he rebelled against the discipline, laughed instead of focused. Raced to win, yes, but more often, raced to feel that boyhood freedom. Still, something was shifting. Each stumble taught him, each groan of his hamstring, each stretch of his back whispered to him that greatness required not just speed, but patience, that one cannot outrun pain, not always. Sometimes you must move with it. Accept its lesson. By 2007, in Osaka, Japan, the World Championships, he was back on a world stage. He earned a silver in the 200 meters, not gold, not yet, but closer, stronger. Until then, his best sprint had always ended just before the finish line of glory, but something had stirred beneath the surface. The coils of muscle, the fire in the breath, the rhythm in the stride. They were aligning now, not playful, not reckless, but primal. Right. Lightning is never quiet the moment before it strikes, but those closest to the sky, like Mills, like McNeil, might sense it. They might feel that the stillness is not peace, but promise. And by the end of that year, Usain Bolt had stopped growing taller, but he had not stopped growing, not in power, not in belief, because a year later, the world would bear witness to something no one had thought possible. But for now, a boy who once chased ragged soccer balls through dust-washed fields had learned to listen, not to applause, but to the storm moving beneath his own skin. And when the gun next fired, it would not just signal a race, it would signal history. The morning of August swelled gently over Beijing. It crept with hush and haze across the sprawling Olympic village. The way sun brushes its fingers over high mountains, tender and unhurried. The world was already watching. Cameras poised, hearts tilted toward the track. But in a quiet room, far from the noise, Usain Bolt laced his shoes. He moved without urgency, without strain. His fingers tied knots, not as though preparing for battle, but as though swinging a hammock, slow, steady, peaceful. At 6'5", towering but still boyish, he stretched limbs that knew both pain and power. There was a fire behind his calm, but it didn't burn openly. It whispered. He'd come to the Olympics with no promises, no assured victories, just a switch in events, and a willingness to test the sky. The decision had rippled. Usain Bolt would no longer be just a 200-meter man. He would run the 100, a race built for fast starters, short legs, explosive pistons. Not for men like him, with long frames and rolling strides. There were doubters. He knew them, heard them, but he did not fear them. He simply listened to his body, and his body for the first time felt right. The stadium in Bird's Nest bloomed, with thousands. Flags waved like seagrass in wind. Nations gathered beneath the torchlight, and somewhere in the nerves of that place, the air shifted. It wasn't excitement, not yet. It was the kind of hush that comes before thunder. Usain had run 9.76 seconds earlier that summer in Jamaica. Analysts took out their notepads. Experts leaned forward in televised boxes. Could he do it again, now, with the world gathered, with history bending around the first breath of the Beijing Olympics? His preliminary heats looked relaxed, effortless, as if he were brushing paint across a canvas without care for color. A jog, almost, shoulders swinging loose. Viewers leaned in, puzzled. Why wasn't he trying harder? But coaches knew, Mills knew. This wasn't laziness. This was cadence, trust. He wasn't racing yet. And then, the night of the final arrived. The 100-meter final 10 seconds that hold legacies, crush dreams, and stretch years into moments too fast for the eye to catch. The starting blocks gleamed beneath the lights. 8 men took their marks. The world held its breath. The countdown buzzed against silence. Every heart in the stadium slowed with it. The hush of billions, all waiting for a sound that would last less than a heartbeat. The gun cracked, and what followed did not feel like a sprint. It felt like the crashing open of something celestial. Usain's start was clean, not perfect. He rose slowly, always a slower starter. The others leaped ahead, early coals in a firestorm. And then, 5 seconds in, his stride opened. It did not look fast. It looked ... effortless, like flight. Not a race, but a release. Knees high, arms symphonic, feet whispering to the earth, then leaving it behind. The gap widened and widened again. He looked to his left. No one. To his right. No one close. Then, with 20 meters left, he did the unthinkable. He pounded his chest, opened his arms, slowed, not out of exhaustion, but complete awareness. The line crossed beneath him. The clock froze. 9.6. 9 seconds. A new world record. He'd slowed down and still run the fastest race the world had ever seen. Commentators scrambled for words. Unbelievable, they said. Astonishing, but the words didn't reach the place where the crowd sat, stunned into silence, then into sound, a roar that lifted from stadium seats to skies swelled with astonishment. Usain smiled, not like legends do, like children do, joyful, full, present. He danced on the track, shoes bright gold, strikes of lightning emblazoned into his spikes. He struck his pose, left arm drawn across his body like a horizon splitting sky and earth. The 2D world pose, he called it later. Instant icon. Not just a sprinter, but a symbol. The wind carried his name across continents. 3 days later, he returned. This time, the 200 meters. His first love. The race that first birthed the whisper of greatness. But now, he was no whisper. He was storm. Crowd remembered the records of Michael Johnson, 19.32 seconds, once thought nearly untouchable. They waited, watched, wondered. Could lightning strike twice? When the gun fired, Bolt came alive again. This time, no slowing, no play, just power. He dug the corner of the track with his cleats, then unfurled onto the straightaway, like a wave. Outpacing the moon, he crossed the line, 19.30. Another world record gone. Another wall shattered. His legs stretched into immortality. The crowd, again, erupted. So did the world. Jamaica screamed into the sky that night. But Usain wasn't done. In the 4x100 meter relay, alongside Nesta Carter, Michael Frater, and Asifa Powell, they gave Jamaica its final blaze of glory that summer. Baton crisp, lines clean, and as Bolt surged for the anchor leg, it wasn't a man they saw, it was a force. He pushed through the tape. Time clocked at 37.10, another world record, 3 races, 3 golds, 3 world records. No one had ever done that. Not like this. He had danced, laughed, bounded barefoot on the track like a boy back in Trelawney, and in doing so, had redrawn the map of what the human body, his body, could do. When he took the microphone afterward, his voice was still soft, still playful. "It's what I came here to do," he said simply. And the press, the analysts, the runners he'd faced, all sat in agreement. There had never been anything like him. Not then. Maybe not ever. And back home, in Sherwood Content, pots banged on porches. Firecrackers sparked in sky. Radios played Bob Marley late into night. Jamaica had always sprinted, always danced. But now, their joy had a face. Tall, laughing, arms wide, open to the wind. A man who outran expectation the way he outran legs shorter than his own, with ease, with grace. And so, the world did not just call him fast, it called him Bolt. That summer, in one city, over 3 races, the boy with the twitching toes, who once chased ragged balls on chalky roads, became something else, and the world began asking a question. What if this is only the beginning? The world tilted slightly after Beijing, not because the earth slowed, but because one man had dot in the hush that followed that summer. Usain Bolt walked into a new kind of existence, not just as a champion or a sprinter, but as something more abstract. A symbol, a myth still walking among us. There were golds hanging around his neck and records filing themselves under his name. But somehow, none of that carried the weight of his smile, the arms flung wide celebration, or that quiet certainty, the feeling that joy had just changed the world a little. He returned home to Jamaica, not as a favorite son anymore, but as a national monument in motion. Children raced barefoot through Sherwood Content, pretending to be Bolt. Stores sold out of replica jerseys. Murals sprouted like vines along concrete walls in Trelawney and Kingston. Arms drawn across chest, lightning carved in color, and Bolt. He grinned. He laughed as if nothing had changed. Still danced to music before his warm-ups. Still joked with his teammates. Still listened to dancehall and ate chicken nuggets before competitions. It baffled some. How could the fastest man on earth remain so lightweight, as though the sky pressed down on everyone else, but lifted gently just for him? But beneath that joy, there was something sharper now. a glint behind the sunglasses. Not pressure, perhaps, but focus, and a hunger he didn't always speak of. For all the charm, he was still a competitor, and soon he'd be called to prove Beijing was no accident. The 2009 World Championships arrived in Berlin. The stage, bright and bracing. The cameras keener now, rivals hungrier to Tyson Gay. Lean and relentless. Asifa, Powell, older but focused. Johan Blake, fierce and rising. Everyone was watching to see, could Bolt go faster? Or was magic a once-only gift? When the 100-meter final came, the stadium froze under the squeal of camera shutters. The gun fired, and then something happened that would echo not for days or seasons, but for generations. He didn't just win, he disappeared. 9.58, a number so surreal it felt almost imaginary. Scientists would study it. Analysts would slow the footage frame by frame. The record books, they didn't just update, they reverberated. His first 40 meters weren't perfect. His acceleration curve wasn't textbook. But his top-end speed shattered metrics. It was as if speed no longer meant resistance, only return. His strides devoured space. And the finish line, it rushed to meet him. The world stopped speaking for a moment, then erupted, and Bolt. He did what Bolt always did. He laughed. The next race was the 200 meters. By now, there were no doubts, just a question of how much faster, and again, with legs unfurling like silk thrown over fire, he crossed the line in 19.19 seconds. Another record. Berlin's air cracked from cheers. He pointed to the sky, chest rising slow and deep as cameras blinked against his silhouette. A crescendo of awe. No man had ever run this fast. No man might again. Off the track, brands chased him. Contracts rolled in like high tide. Puma minted. Special edition spikes. Gatorade reshaped campaigns around a golden smile. He became the world's favorite thunderclap. Something to celebrate, to marvel over, to hope alongside. But he never changed the rhythm of his joy. At meets around the globe, he danced, he chatted with fans, signed every flag held aloft by trembling hands. He turned press conferences into comedy, took selfies with mascots, hugged volunteers. Reporters waited hours for quotes, only to receive jokes about dancing, dreaming, or chicken nuggets. And still, he raced in diamond leagues, in world championships, in any arena where lanes curled open like invitation. Records weren't the only goal now. Presence was, performance was, and not always stopwatch performance, the kind that lifted spirits, not just medals. Because Bolt understood something sacred. Speed is a gift, but joy, that's the offering. He turned races into theater, lunged forward on finish lines with mock panic just to tease the margin, slowed mid-sprint to smile for cameras. Outrageous to some, irresistible to most. He ran like others breathed, without panic, without bitterness. Only rhythm. Rivals came. Tyson Gay ran 9.69, a time that in any other age would have been canonized in gold. Johan Blake clocked 19.26 over 200 meters. Justin Gatlin, fierce and older, fought with grit and fury. Sometimes races were close, sometimes not, but always. Bolt finished first when it mattered. Not just chronologically, emotionally. He didn't win every race. There were slips, false starts, days his form dipped. But in the collective memory, the whispering place where legends are born, he never truly lost, because he had long since become more than the clock. He had become a feeling wherever he stepped. Jamaica, London, Rio, New York. Crowds surged to witness not just the outcome, but the presence. To feel what the wind feels like when it wears a smile. And inside it all, the lights, the limbs, the long gold boots, there remained the boy who had once sprinted for a ball made of string and cloth. Only now, the world chased him and never caught up. He moved more carefully now, not slow, never that, but with a kind of earned grace, a softened edge to each stride. There was still thunder in his legs, but it came with overcast skies now. In training, he stretched a little longer, stood a little quieter at the blocks. The long shadows of his own legacy began to circle. And somewhere, just beyond the echo of cheers, the whispers of time became familiar. Injuries, once little things, now stayed longer than they should. A stiff back, a tight hamstring, tendons that once hummed like strings now carried their own caution songs. The man who once outran the imagination had begun to carry its weight, not just medals, but what they meant. And yet, he ran London, 2012, another Olympics, another global gathering of breath and belief. The bird's nest of Beijing had already made him a legend. But what happens after lightning strikes? Most vanish. Bolt returned, taller somehow in spirit, though the years had begun to hum beneath his skin. There were questions now about focus, about form, about fire. He answered with gold, the 100 meters, the 200, the 4x100 relay, again, the same triple crown. This time, not as a surprise, this time as affirmation. Usain Bolt was not a moment, he was an era, a chapter etched in gold and charisma. He grinned across finish lines like he had in '08, but the edges of that smile told a deeper story. He had something to protect now, not just a legacy, a mythology, but protection comes with tension, and time, gentle but relentless, continued. Forward, even the finest machines feel their cogs loosen. Even lightning, when it circles the earth too many times, begins to scatter its charge. 4 more years, Rio, 2016. By now, the world had changed. Young stars had risen. Nations had bred new sprinters. Track had grown louder, richer, more data-driven. And still, when Bolt stepped onto the stage, shoes gleaming, pose drawn like a bow across the sky, everything stilled, the noise quieted, the breath caught. He swept the board again. 100, 200, relay, triple, arguments about the greatest, they no longer mattered to him. He was less interested in proving his place than in enjoying it, in standing beneath the fireworks with teammates singing next to him, arms around shoulders, gold swaying against jersey. But away from the spotlight, things changed. Training grew harder, recovery slower. His coach, Glenn Mills, began to speak in softer tones, no longer pushing, more often guiding, encouraging. The fire was still there, but it flickered differently. Not smaller, just older. Cameras still loved him. Crowds still screamed. Children still mimicked his pose in schoolyards from Tokyo to Toronto. But he felt the weight now, not the weight of being fast, the burden of being fastest ever, and of staying there when the body begins to fray. Sometimes he wondered quietly, what happens when I'm no longer him? Not Bolt, not the myth, just Usain again. At press conferences, he began to speak more of life beyond the lane, starting businesses, maybe football, maybe rest. Spending time back in Sherwood Content, walking the same hills that once carried his barefoot shadow. He joked less, still smiled, but the smile held history now, and duty. With each race, the expectations weren't just from the press or his rivals. They were from all those who never thought joy and dominance could live together. He had become not just the ideal athlete, but the proof of what sports could be at its highest form. Not war, not ego, but pure, unfiltered delight. And that came with a different kind of pain. He had nothing left to prove, no time to beat, and yet still, every start line whispered, "Can you do it again?" He still did. Even when he slowed by fractions, he won by whole seconds. Even when strain showed in his shoulders, he lifted with grace. The world noticed and appreciated. Not everything needs to be faster than before. Sometimes, greatness is the ability to stay a little longer, to hold the light while others find their way to it. Bolt held that light until the end neared. His coach knew, his body did too. The relay team had changed. The finishes were tighter. The joy's still there, but with more glimpses of fatigue, edged into the moment between the performance and the pose. And yet, the world still watched, still hoped. Because when you've witnessed someone play joyfully with gravity, you've seen more than sport. You've seen magic. And even as that magic dimmed, it didn't vanish. It settled, took root in memory, in repetition, in rhythm. Because to run as he did wasn't just about winning. It was about revealing that playfulness can be powerful, that confidence can be kind, that speed isn't only measured by clocks, but by the laughter it leaves behind. And now, every echo of applause began to sound like goodbye, not mournful, grateful. The sprint of immortality is not without scars. It's not weightless forever. But even as his legs slowed and the times grew standard, he remained the standard, because there's a burden in becoming what history remembers. But Bolt carried it the only way he ever knew, with arms wide open. The air in London that summer felt heavy, not with heat, but with knowing. The kind of knowing that lingers in the silence before a symphony ends. In the city where cobblestones remember kings and cathedrals whisper centuries, the 2017 World Championships began not with fanfare, but with a hush beneath the noise. And somewhere in the stillness of it, Usain Bolt laced his shoes one more time. They were gold, of course. His walk onto the track did not send the usual electric tremor through the crowd. It sent something deeper, a breath drawn in unison, a moment between expectation and farewell. Because this time, the whole world understood this would be the last. After nearly a decade of racing daylight, he had come to the edge. He was still tall, still smiling, still playful in interviews. But his steps carried something quieter, not reluctance, but reverence. He wasn't retreating from his legacy. He was walking beside it, hand in hand. Into dusk, the 100 meters would be his final solo sprint. The field was fast, younger. Familiar faces like Justin Gatlin, rivals turned companions in the dance of decades. There was noise, of course, there was. But Bolt stood with calm in his bones, brushed his hands together, and closed his eyes at the blocks. Then silence. The gun cracked. He rose, as he always had, slightly behind, needing space to stretch into his storm. The crowd's rhythm followed him, heartbeats stitched to every step. But this time, something gave. Not visibly at first, but in the subtle way his stride didn't open as wide. His arms swung a little heavier. his reach just shy of airborne. He crossed third 9.95 seconds, Gatlin first, Coleman second. They bowed to him at the finish, not out of habit, out of instinct. The stadium, at first, didn't know how to react. A roar not of victory, but of gratitude. A standing ovation that felt like the final pages of a beloved novel being turned, slow and reluctant. This wasn't about numbers anymore. It never really had been. He smiled, bittersweet, but beautiful. Raised both arms in thanks. Tapped his chest, pointed upward. The press cameras flashed like fireflies, their clicks sounding more like pens closing than shutters opening. He spoke softly afterward, shoulders wrapped in a Jamaican flag. "You win some, you lose some," he said, like he was still 15 and smiling at a dusty schoolyard race. "But the love I feel, that never loses." Some days later came the 4x100-meter relay, his true final race. The last time he'd crouch in the warm breath of stadium light, waiting for a baton instead of history. With teammates eager to honor him, he took the anchor position once more. The last leg, the last chapter. The baton moved from hand to hand, clean, efficient, and then it reached him. He exploded forward. For a second, just a second, it looked like he could catch the wind again, like maybe the years would peel back and he'd soar. But 16 strides in, pain wins, a twist, a stumble, a stop. He crumpled, not like a failing, not like defeat, like a curtain drawn, not torn. The stadium silenced itself. He stayed on the track, clutching his hamstring, his teammates rushing toward him, lifting him, helping him forward. He limped, but in truth, he walked taller in that moment than ever. No medals, no record, just silence and sadness and a different kind of awe. And even in pain, he smiled, because he could feel that every soul in the stadium still standing, every voice quiet with respect, every child watching who had once traced his name into the air with a finger and a dream. He had given them everything, and they gave it back in silence deeper than applause. There was no parade of gold this time, only light, only legacy. And in that final limp down the track, eyes up, arms draped across teammates' shoulders, something in the world exhaled, letting go, wishing gently in his quietest race, when glory had no stopwatch. Bolt had never run with more grace, and as he waved to the crowd, pain in his leg and warmth in his heart. A truth settled on the asphalt like dew in morning. Even lightning knows when to leave the sky, and when it does, the world remembers the storm. The track is quiet now. Somewhere in the world, a 400-meter oval lies beneath the early light, its surface smooth, its lanes unmarked by footsteps. There is no crowd gathering, no cameras blinking, no music, only silence, the kind that feels both empty and sacred. That's where it begins, and ends. These days, Usain Bolt moves more gently through the world. He laughs the same, speaks with ease, but pays closer attention to the quiet. There's no need to chase time anymore. Not when you've bent it beneath your feet. Not when you've stood at the top of the world and smiled as though it belonged. Not to you, but to everyone watching. He lives, mostly, in the memory of others now. The replays, the photos, the murals brushed against walls across small towns and sprawling cities. Kids line up and strike his pose before school assemblies, in parking lots, under bus stop shelters shimmering with heat. His name is not shouted, it floats, like something heard once in a dream and remembered long after waking. Sherwood content still waits for him. The same hills, the same winding roads, the same tilted fences and mango trees dropping their fruit like offerings. At the shop his parents once ran, people still speak of the boy who ran because it felt like flying, not with nostalgia, with stillness, as if he never quite left. Sometimes you can almost see him, a figure taller than most, walking with a stride that suggests he once outran the wind. He visits schools, signs autographs, tells stories that begin not with gold medals or Olympic glory, but with cloth-wrapped soccer balls and skipping chores to race the sun down the lane. He sits with the elders and laughs like he's still late for supper. He is no longer the racer, but he is still the race, and in the world. This world that never quite stops moving, his spirit lingers wherever feet hit the ground just a little. Too fast, hearts beat a little louder, and someone believes they, too, might step across that dividing line between ordinary and unforgettable. Because Bolty gave us more than speed. He gave the world permission to dream with its eyes open, to run not just toward medals, but toward joy, toward freedom. His records may one day fall. His times may be passed by newer names. That's the nature of history. It gathers and moves. But there are some things not bound by numbers carved into. Digital clocks, presence, grace, wonder, those remain. He wasn't just a man who raced. He was a myth that lived long enough to wave goodbye. They say lightning strikes once, in the same place, but they never say what happens after. Sometimes it echoes, it settles in the wings of children as they run barefoot toward rivers. It hums in the lungs of young athletes as they brace themselves at the line. It moves in the very silence before. A race begins because even in stillness there is memory. Was he faster than any man before him? Yes, but that's not what made him transcendent. What made him unforgettable was how he carried it. All the talent, the expectation, the power with a lightness that defied gravity. He reminded us that you can smile at the summit, that greatness doesn't need to scowl, that fun and ferocity can wear the same jersey. And now, long after the last race has been run, he remains woven into the fabric of sport, not just as a champion, but as the measure by which all joy-driven excellence is known. The wind still carries his story in parks, on playgrounds, at community meets where children call out to one another in laughter, sprinting not for trophies, but for the thrill, the spark, the thing you can't quite name, but feel in your bones when you run without fear. It is there that Bolt still lives, in the lean of a stride, in a mother's proud cheering on the sideline, in a coach's quiet nod when a young runner lifts off the curve just right, in every new name rising from heartbeats and hope, ready to chase the stars with laughter. And someday, perhaps far from now, another child will rise from red dirt roads and feel their feet kiss the earth in that ancient rhythm. They won't be trying to be Bolt. They won't need to, because legends don't demand imitation. They demand remembering, and he is remembered, not like a flame that burned fast and vanished, but like a storm settled into story, whispered even. In sleep, time has moved on, but each time a gust of wind lifts over a racetrack, or a child laughs while running barefoot down a hill somewhere, quiet and green, you'll know he's still here.